This week we'll be discussing our financial education.
I don't think that every black person in the world wants to go back to Africa. And I don't think that every black person wants to actually go and live there.
Right.
If you don't want to go and live there, if you are here, it's important that we buy assets in the UK, in Europe, and everywhere else. Why? Because most of, if you go and check the ratio of ownership among low-income homes and high-income homes, that's where you see that the race thing kind of goes. It just goes out the scale and is mostly white.
Mm-hmm.
And not having an income puts a strain on the next generation that will have to rent again, that will have to spend money on some stuff that come with the fact that you don't have your own property.
Mm.
If you as a parent decide to buy property in Africa and buy property here as well, and in the next generation you have an insurance, you die off, you leave that to your kids could literally put their money in the stock market, in funds, whatever, and could literally be trust fund baby. Like they wouldn't actually have to work.
Yeah.
Because that is money that will keep on growing. Like I have some investment with some companies that they'll give you like 6% or 7% every quarter, not every month, every quarter.
Mm.
If you have $1 million that your mama left you behind and you put it in these type of companies, and every quarter these guys are kind of giving you all these thousands of, like, you don't need to work.
Yeah.
You're getting 60 grand every quarter. Like, that's a lot of money. So I think it's important. Assets here, back at home and over here in the UK are decent. We are the spare tire of society in a lot of countries because we don't retain our wealth.
Yeah.
If we do retain wealth in the UK, we should do by buying assets. If you make your money, you don't care about how they call you. If you call the shots, you don't care how they like. So if we had our money and retain our money, it wouldn't be impacting us that much because they would talk about you. And and if your community holds money, you won't have the issue that your community is always pulling you back. If everybody has money, there's an education behind retaining wealth. And if you have the education, you won't be the type of person that will drag a brother down just because you feel uncomfortable with the fact that he's making money.
Yeah.
Most of the times, if you start making money, you want the people in your circle to be at least as wealthy as you or higher, because that's the people that you learn from. If a person is trying to drag you down, it's because he doesn't know what to do with a circle like that. And he doesn't have the education to profit off that. You cannot work with people that have billions of money for 1 year and not come up with a way of making money, because the amount of knowledge that they'll drop on you on a daily basis, they're giving you insights, inside tape. That's stuff that you should have leverage on. So that is very important. And back at home, if you plan one day to invest back in Africa and all of that, do buy. Because one of my biggest fear is that there will be a shift towards Africa. None of us would have bought land or houses, and now we find ourselves renting from white people in Africa.
Yes.
Because they already had the money.
Yes.
And they just moved down, bought everything, and they're like, come over here. Now we're here. You coming? Cool. Come and rent for me.
Right.
I wouldn't like that because, like, dude, if our ancestors were to see something like that, what I advise people not to do is to go and build a huge mansion that they will never live in, and then stay here knowing that they will never go back. That doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. Because you know what that is? That is the same mentality that we want to disassociate ourselves from, about the hood rich and all of that. You build a mansion for looks, for how people would think about you back home, or for how people in Europe will be like, oh, you haven't done anything in Africa. But if you had money over here and you had an estate in Kent, ain't nobody talking about to you.
Yeah.
Because you could sell your estate at any time, 10 or 40 years down the line, and buy 10 plots back in Africa.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's important that you prioritize where is your aim going. When it comes to investing, the UK is an island. It's just one drop in Europe.
Mm.
The world is big.
Yeah.
Ghana is one drop in Africa. Africa is big.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not focus always on just thinking that I'm from Ghana. Like, I was talking with one of my boys and I was like, dude, I want to come to Nigeria. And I was like, oh, what do you want to do? I want to see what business is going on over there and see where I can put my money. And he's like, are you coming to live here? I'm like, no, but why wouldn't I put money there?
Yes.
If tomorrow, let's take a country that we are neutral to, like Burkina Faso made so much money that the quality of life went so much up, Ghanaian people would migrate from Ghana and rush there, because that's what happened with Ivory Coast when Ivory Coast was called the Little Paris. Ghanaian people went there. When Nigeria made money, Ghanaian people went to Nigeria. When Ghana started developing, Nigeria people came to Ghana, and all of that. You never know where money gonna go. And why would you cut yourself away from profiting? Why? Why would you limit yourself from making money? Why people don't care if your money is black? They'll take it.
Yeah.
Arab people don't care if they'll like, everybody's making money off of us, and you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna just be in this corner because this is the corner where my grandparents, like, dude, come on, open up your, like, there's more like that. I was talking with my friend and I took him to a seminar because I was interested in buying land in Dubai. Not land, sorry, properties in Dubai. And he was like, why you want to buy here? I'm like, listen, the return on property in Dubai is high. Like, it's one of the places where if you rent, people are paying you a lot of money and you get a lot of money back. And even if you were not to rent, down the line is something that you can sell. He's funny. He's like, you're not Arab, you're not this. Yeah, okay, you can get a permit, get an education. They give permit out there.
Yeah.
Once I decide to sell that property, I can, 90% of people living in Dubai are not even Arabs. Are white people, Chinese people, Malaysian people, Southeast Asian people, 90%. So do you really think there's no business capability there? You don't need the 10% of Arab people to buy whatever you want to build. But if you do have something that you want to, it's a guy that I used to follow that he went to do like a very refined coffee bean in the Arabic country, and he's selling it. He used to be a rapper in Compton. He said, I'm living way better back in Dubai because he found something to profit on, and he's sending back home. He's sending money back home in America. Have you ever heard of that? He lives in Dubai and sends money back home in America. Yeah, because if people live in Compton. So let's not limit ourselves to a geographic area. I want to have homes in the Caribbean area, in the West Indies. I want to have homes in the Arabic Peninsula. I want to have homes in Africa, and not Ghana by force. It can be all over the place. I want my kids to ball everywhere around the globe.
Okay, thank you. No, that's a very important point about not limiting ourselves. White people walk all over the world like, I own this place and I'm going to own there and I'm going to own there and I'm going to own there. So we need to, you know, refocus and walk with vim and walk with power and our pride and be knowledgeable. Again, it goes down to education.
So an asset is basically anything that in the future can generate cash flow for you, for us, for your children. So anything that can generate cash flow for you. Assets make you money. Anything, this is a very simple concept. Anything that takes money out of your pocket is a liability. I know that's very general terms, but I'll break that down a bit more. So when it comes to now deciding what assets to buy, they do say that the black community spending patterns, they tend to spend on things that make them look important. So big cars, you know, as Jay said, a car is a liability. You know, I was watching this show and they said in America, a lot of these, you know, these rappers or whatever, they want a brand new car. The brand new car, the minute you drive it out of the sales place, the garage, the sales place, it depreciates by about $7,000 already. Automatically, it depreciates. So I think we really do need to address our spending patterns, you know. So assets that generate wealth, that generate income. If I just quickly break that down, so examples of that would be real estate. rental properties. You know, we've seen our parents do that. That's one way they got their foot on the ladder, and they started renting out, you know, the multi, you know, use properties, and from there they could purchase another property and purchase another property. So that is a very good asset. Property real estate, whether it's commercial or residential. Gold, that's one of my favorites. Gold, investing in gold, that's something that you can easily get into. You can there's one company that I like. You can buy gold. There's many companies that you can buy gold from, so you can just put aside a bit of money and purchase gold. That's another asset. Artwork, antiques, you know, collectibles. And then liabilities would be, you've got the 60-inch TV. You know, that's not something that's going to appreciate. It depreciates, you know. Through our assets, this is generational wealth that can be passed down, you know, to our children. You know, I wanted to, so that was just a brief point on spending patterns, assets, what are assets and what are liabilities. I wanted to touch on a point. I really do feel there needs to be a stronger tie between the diaspora. I know I keep banging on about this. The diaspora, how we generate wealth in the diaspora, and how we connect, invest in the homelands. The homelands. You know, as a collective, as a people, I feel that we're not going to find or we won't find our economic freedom till we find each other globally. I don't think we will tap into the real potential of our economic freedom until we find each other. The diaspora link to the homeland needs to be strengthened. We are missing a trick. We really are missing a trick here. You know, we're operating in isolation. We work, you know, we work our backs off over here. There's a missing link. It's broken, you know. If again, I will go back to the Indian merchants throughout British Africa. They had strong connections with the homeland. China as well. The center was the homeland. Israel and the Jews, you know, a section of the Jewish community, very strong links to the homeland. And you know, we hear stories of case studies of where a Chinese person will be fully funded by the homeland to, you know, I think they said there's 10 million Chinese in Africa right now. That is a network. It's a network. And they are, you know, they say the Jews rule the world. How do you think that they've been able to achieve and attain, you know, to that level? They have very strong ties to the center, to their homeland. And I really do feel the African diaspora. I mean, I was in the kitchen and I was cooking and I was thinking about this point. I said, I really do believe things do happen for a reason. No matter how painful it is, and no matter how unfortunate it is. So slavery and how African population was dispersed to the Caribbeans, to America, and then we have the homeland, Africa. We have Africans in Brazil. And there was a point that I wrote. It was, let us take advantage of these lands, have their benefits, their resources. They have, you know, they are there. You know, now we have our peoples. We have our people in the Caribbean. We have them in Brazil. We're not tapping in. We are, you know, yes, we could have migrated and traveled, but history, it forced it in a way whereby we are dispersed globally all over the world. There's so much power and strength in that. If we could just connect and tap into that, we don't have to be, as they say, Black people are at the bottom of the economic ladder across the world. Black people have the cleaning jobs. Someone said they came to the UK, they saw the Black guy sweeping the streets. They went to Brazil, the Black man was sweeping the street. They went to Germany, the Black man was sweeping. It doesn't have, it's not to say that we don't have people in positions of power. yes, we do. However, we do hold that status that Black people are at the bottom of, and it doesn't need to be the case.
What you're saying is true. I will reply to from the beginning. So you were listing the type of assets that people should invest in. I would not advise people to invest in like if somebody comes out straight from the hood, and the things that they kind of need to invest at the beginning is like the saving, investing, all this kind of stuff. Art is very flimsy to start with. Like you need to let a certain level of wealth before you go in the art realm and all of that, because the value of art is a little bit flimsy and is based on who is looking for it, and is not a commodity that is always going to hold that specific price. It's based on demand and offer. It's not like bread, but to an extent it's going to be like that. If there's nobody looking for that, it's going to go down in value. So it's not the first thing that I would recommend people to. The first thing that we need to invest in if we want to build wealth is stuff that are first necessity that somebody will need in order to go on and live. A house, commercial business, a service that people do need. A lot of our businesses go out of, they run out of business because of the fact that they offer a service that you might need one or twice and then you don't go back to. And then they get mad at you because you don't, and you're like, you can't just be a Black business. You need to add value. If you don't provide a specific service that we need, it's not gonna. You can't just spend money. You get me? To get back to the whole community, the whole network, I think is too. Is an ideal, but it's not truth. In terms of Black people in Brazil feel Brazilian before they feel African. These people feel Brazilian before they feel African. For us to build that, we would have to first build something on our own, which gets down to our smaller communities. So Nigerians, Ghanaians, Sierra Leoneans, and everybody else. If we don't enrich our communities back at home, a lot of people that are Black, diaspora, not necessarily children of immigrants, but rather that they came in with through slavery, through all these kind of things, they won't feel a strong tie back at home. When Israel was founded, they sent a bunch of Israelites back, Jews, not Israelites. They sent back Jews back, and these people deprived themselves from everything in order to provide everything that now Israel does have. These people went in the middle of the desert to become farmers, to become builders, to become masons, to become whatever it was needed to build a society. But Israel was built out of nothing. So these people went back there, and this unity was there. So then when now the ties are built, they have a point of reference that is something to be proud about. So if somebody does something wrong to a Jew around the world, Israel is always pulling some string and telling them, yo, I'm checking you. You don't treat my people like that. And it holds a value to have a Jewish passport. Mm-hmm. You look at the Indian community, it's true what you're saying, that they seem to be but India is one country, China is one country, all Israel is one country. Our work is a little bit tougher because a lot of our people did not emigrate. A lot of people in West Indies, in South America, are African of descendants, but were dragged there. So I feel proud to be a Ghanaian, I feel proud to be an Ashanti, and I feel proud to be an African, all of that. Some of these people still need to learn all of that. So it's a little bit harder for us to build this network because they don't necessarily relate to us. Like you can go, I had a Brazilian colleague and he was like, yeah, brother, black thing. If you go to Brazil, it might be that he feels Brazilian before feeling Black because he relates the language, the culture, and everything to those people. The source of everything for them is not Ghana, it's not Nigeria.
Yeah.
The source of everything is still Brazil.
Brazil, yeah.
They cannot go to our president and tell them they're treating me wrong. Nobody will act for them. They don't hold a passport that will give the Ghanaian president even the right to defend them legally.
Yeah.
They are not citizens of Africa. So what I'm saying is, like, unless our network starts from the center where we build our communities. Talking earlier on about, not earlier on today, but another time, how a lot of Nigerians talk down on Nigeria, even though Nigeria is being a giant of Africa and is one of the places that things should start from, and it trickles down to other countries. If Nigeria does better, we supply electricity to Nigeria, we get better because there's more money coming our way. We get better, we buy stuff from Ivory Coast, they get better. If our if our small village doesn't get better, then our community doesn't get better, the country, and then the continent, and then the diaspora. If the diaspora is not even doing better themselves, there's no reason, there's no way, and there's no reason somebody in Africa that just looks at us as, that's where I want to go, he's going to care about us in terms of, let's build a network. And this goes back to the topic that we're saying, that if you just give them money, they will just spend it in a bad way because then they don't see the bigger vision. So I feel like if we start going back home and we install this vision, there's people like Fela had a vision. Before coming to Europe and doing whatever, had a vision at home because they wanted home to be better. I feel like we have a lot of knowledge and a lot of consciousness about the vision that some people at home do not have. Because when you talk with some people that are in Africa and leave Africa and do everything African, they will despise everything they have to come and take whatever rubbish you give them. So this network will need to be built a little bit at a time, and we cannot have the same results of China or India, because keep in mind, Chinese people have been drilled communism and to behave in a certain way. They have been like you know what communism is a strict totalitarian regime. None of our people have this thing going on except from countries. So they don't have another way of going.
Okay. So yeah, a lot of really good points have been made. So for me, when it comes to thinking about assets, I do agree with Joe when he's talking about having not a focus on just one country, because I believe for my kids as well, definitely the plan is land everywhere, because I believe one of the most important things for the African community globally are safe havens. War is a reality of life, and as Kate said, because of how capitalism was formulated, the African has always been on the bottom of it because they have needed the resources of Africa to continue to dominate the global, just the global stage. So there's a reason why you go around the world and you see the black person at the bottom. It's because they need to keep perpetuating that image, but also it's because that is what capitalism is based on. Socialism is really something that I think Africans all around the globe would benefit from tapping into. And if we really look at, there's the name of somebody that I would like everybody to look into. Walter Rodney. He was a revolutionary anti-imperialist, a socialist and a Pan-African. African people have usually been like the ones that have been majorly displaced or the major victims of wars, land grabs and all of that sort of thing. So I think when I think about assets, I do think in terms of safety and self-sufficiency. And also, because of how capitalism is structured, African people are usually on the bottom of that around the globe because that's what created it. I think going past that point, as Kate said about the global network, and to Jay's point about it being much harder for Africans globally to sort of come together because it is it's a much larger community than anybody else. However, I do feel like if people really tapped into the fact that if you're not safe in Brazil and you're not safe in the UK and you're not safe in America, you're not safe in Africa, then what is the point of you having wealth and money and all of this if we had all of those things when the European came to Africa? and basically was just like, I'm having that. So I think there just needs to be like multiple assets that we're working towards financially, in terms of land, and also teaching our kids about sort of tangible things like how to grow your own food, how to just how to plan, how to survive, and all of those things. And the reason why I brought up Walter Rodney's name is because he was an anti-imperialist, a socialist, a nationalist, and a Pan-African. And people with all of those titles are usually, pretty much all of them usually get assassinated if they fulfill all of those titles, or even at least 3. And I think that demonstrates the fear within this global system of what it would take for us to actually understand our power, because just getting money, in my opinion, will not free African people globally. I think understanding being anti-imperialist is one level, being Pan-African is another level.
Yeah, what I was gonna say is, I think there's been such really good points. Everyone's mentioned something like very valuable, and I know everything seems with everything that has been said, it's come from, like, if we're looking big, you know, like the global effect of everything. But even if we kind of just rein it in a little bit with what we have like now, and how you know, Black businesses are now, one of the things that I still feel hold us back is attitude. The attitude towards each other's businesses. Like, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if it's like a Black cheapskate mentality thing, but it's like, you know, sometimes a person will have their, you know, their own business in whatever it is, but because they're Black or because they're African or whatnot. And I think this actually extends to, you know, just everything we have spoken about in terms of generational wealth and everything, like, overall, is that you know, there's still this kind of expecting that because you're Black, or because, like, you're my fellow African or whatnot, you know, kind of chop the price for me a little bit, you know, lower the pricing kind of thing. And I think if we can't see that, if we can't change that attitude, and if we can't value already what we have in terms of the Black businesses here and whatnot, it's going to be quite hard with even extending into kind of the networking within different countries. And, you know, as Kate was saying, with connecting with this person who's over here and connecting with this person over there, it was something that popped into my mind, that even like right now, with the Black businesses that we do have around us and connecting with each other, still the attitude even towards each other isn't quite it. Like, I don't think that it's there.
I'm going to start with what you said, Ellie, because that leads on to what I want, my very brief point. Understanding our power. Understanding our power. I understand what Jay was saying in terms of Africa is large, the way the population or the African peoples were displaced. I understand all of that, but I think it has to come to a point whereby we take control of, and it is not to say that it's going to be easy. Some, as you said, Jay, some people do not see the benefit, not even forget about the Brazilian Africans and the Caribbeans not seeing the benefit, even us Black British. The way our mentality is so warped. I mean, I'm married to an African, and so I've learned so much from being, even though we were raised by African parents, still there's certain things we really did not know. It's a mentality, and it's very warped and quite sick, actually, that we have this almost a superiority complex that, oh well, we're British Africans, so we're a step higher, we do you a favor, Africa. But I think this comes with, we're going to have to educate, because when I say that we're missing a trick, there's so many Black people living in absolute abject poverty across the globe. If only they knew. I came across this figure, and Africa has I think the largest untapped landscape. I don't know if someone can help me with this, in the world, untapped, you know. It doesn't mean that we go there and conquer and we just ravage the place, but there's just so much potential and possibilities. And when it comes to understanding our power, it comes down to, you know, we have to use what we have. We have to use what we have to our benefit. The advantages. What do we have in to our advantage? So, for instance, a culture. You know, realizing our field of possibilities. There's so many advantages, benefits, pros that we can tap into. You know, it's not all doom and gloom for us. There really is so much potential, and if we can educate, just keep on preaching this message to the global diaspora, then we can realize our power and our strength. You know, this thought came to me, the thought that I mentioned earlier, that we've been dispersed all over the world, and actually there could be a purpose in this. You know, some of us are here in the UK, some of us are in the Caribbean. You know, there are industries there. There's the tourism industry of the Caribbean. You've got and it came from, with this George Floyd, the events that occurred around George Floyd and what happened with him. And a lot of Africans were saying African Americans should come back home. They should come back. No, why should they? Why should they? Actually, can we strengthen the links between Africa and African? I understand what you're saying, Jay, but they look down, maybe they're cultural difference, they look down on Africans. They, you know, but this is the best time to educate that, look, you guys, okay, you know, we can see you're struggling, you know, you can have backing, you know, and now this is where it comes to African leaders. And, you know, Ellie and Debbie, you know, I bang on about this. I really do feel, I think with George Floyd's death, African leaders, for the first time, I think, the AU have spoken up about Black world affairs and, you know, the subjugation of Black people globally, because normally they're very quiet on this. And it has to be Black lives before economy. And I really do feel this is why African leaders don't speak up for their people. I know my husband will say, oh, but African Americans are not citizens of Africa. Yes, true. However, this is a global identity. Is a global identity. When that happened to George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, that's our identity. No matter how, and we've touched on this on the last podcast, no matter how much money you make, when you go to another country, you do not carry that respect with you. They just see you as a Black person. So until we can educate ourselves on addressing this, strengthening the ties, I think it's going to be, maybe not even in this generation, but until we can find a way where we can work together, then we'll find true economic freedom. Jay, you said in terms of Africa being a continent and China and India being countries. There was a statistic that I found today. Yes, you're right. We do, even on the continent itself, they need to get their house in order. You know, for the diaspora to tap into it effectively, they need to get their house in order. So the figures were inter-European trade, and this is this year, 2020, inter-European trade stands at, this is Europe, stands at 69%. Inter-Asian trade stands at 59%. Inter-African trade stands at 18%. So when we're talking of, you know, so it is a valid point you make. They haven't even figured it out on the continent, you know. And then but then I really do believe it's not only money that the diaspora have to offer. We have skills, and it's not to say that the population in Africa are not educated or skillful. Is not to say that, you know. However, we do have you know, skill sets that we can take back and we can invest it into Africa and maybe plug these holes. We need to establish why that inter-African trade is so low, and normally they say it comes down to infrastructure, the lack of infrastructure. So I do think we need to look at these things. There was one last point when I mentioned taking advantage of what we have in our favor, realizing our field of possibilities. One, the size of Africa. They say that, and that's what you say, is vast. The size of Africa in terms of population and land mass and resources. In Africa, they say you can fit USA, the whole of the USA, you can fit the whole of Asia into Africa, and then add in the extra countries, the size of China, the size of India, again, and the size of Japan. It's massive, even though we have been led to believe otherwise. The African population stands at 1 billion. That's just the population in Africa. We're not even talking about the diaspora, you know, and 70% of that population are youth. Some people were saying that the reason why coronavirus, COVID-19, didn't ravish Africa is because they said this is an illness that kills the elderly. Africa's population is 70% youth. And a third of that is the middle class in Africa. We have endless possibilities. We really do need to tap into that. They have predicted that by 2050, the population growth is going to be 1.3 billion in Africa. There's a reason why we have to look at, there's a reason why certain agents are advocating for population control. They know there is power in that. So I think our mandate is to educate and find a way for us to create platforms where we can, like the one that Miss Nolene was talking about, the lady that has created a platform where the diaspora can easily and conveniently purchase you know, goods for that on a local level, on a micro level. That is a solution to a problem. Oh yeah, and one more point, sorry, in terms of investing in other countries of Africa, I was looking at the top countries to invest in Africa, you know. So yeah, definitely not just sticking to your country of origin. At the moment, the ranking, I think Nigeria and Ghana, they are in the top 10, but there are other countries that you can look at. They're really good investment opportunities.
I'm going to touch on some of the points that Kate and Ellie brought up, but I also have a question for them at the same time. So one of the issues with the lack of trade is in our countries, most of them, we have everything that we need in terms of plantations, in terms of food, we have this in most of the countries. Even the countries like Angola that were starving with food, they were not starving because of the fact that they were not fields to do. It's because of the fact that nobody was tapping that type of in the agriculture to make sure that that would go up, because it was more convenient for them to bring in stuff from other countries and all of that. And when they bring in that kind of stuff, they don't come to Ghana and take the rice. They go straight to the US. That is something that we have an issue about. The intra-trade that we keep doing a lot with outsiders rather than insiders, because most of our countries are self-sufficient. Most of our countries have everything we need to be very, very wealthy. The issue is that our resources go out. Congo doesn't sell the, I don't remember the material that you need to do phones, doesn't sell it to African countries. It sells it to countries in Europe. It sells to Apple, to Samsung, to China, so that they can build this kind of stuff. So if we're not selling anything among each other, that trade will not go up. But before that trade can go up, we need that. Otherwise, we're just going to be trading stuff that we actually don't need. Ghana doesn't need rice from Nigeria. Nigeria doesn't need rice from Ghana. We have that. But we throw ours away to put the US one on the market, or the Chinese one on the market that has plastic in it. So the lack of trading is not necessarily a bad thing. It needs to spike up because there's so much stuff that we might, but I feel like it will go up in trade in services, because the more we get technology in place and all of these things, we'll have so many services that we can exchange as countries. Because at the end, the UK doesn't send anything to Italy. What do they send? Potatoes? what do you guys have? Potatoes, something like that? What do they send to Italy? All these kind of things to come. Most of the countries in the south part of Europe, they grow everything. So the stuff that Italy would take from the UK is services. A lot of the companies that I used to work for an American company, they were doing IT services. They came from America to build their branch in Italy. So we will need to focus on this type of service that eventually will be in Africa as well. And I think they started because a lot of the African banks that we have, I'm banking with a bank that is actually South African, and I think there's shares in Nigeria as well, and stuff like that. So this will spread around the more service-based stuff we have. And if we remain very agricultural and all of that, we're not actually very going to progress. Like the countries that are the richest are the ones not that are producing necessarily a product, because heavy labor doesn't make you that much money. Is the countries that can provide services. Look at Switzerland. What do they produce? Banking system. And they have the money from everybody. Do you get what I'm saying? So if we had these things in places where our countries become safe havens for Europeans to come and put their money in our banks, that's a service that we could provide. Right now, nobody would trust to put the money into that because they would rather put it in Switzerland and in some Caribbean islands, to be honest. So I'm saying if this is there, we should try and get a manufacturer, definitely, and definitely that one as well. Another thing that I wanted to touch on, and this is, I'm stating this and I'm also asking a question to both Kaylee and Andy. You were talking about 70% of the population in Africa being youths, and the numbers of people that we have. And I think everybody in the panel realizes that there's so much work to do in education and knowledge in terms of we need people to have Africa as an aim. We need people to know that what we're selling out here is just a dream. The dream is back at home. We need people to understand financial education. We need people to all this kind of stuff. We need people to want to build the connection and the network back at home. But if 70% of the youth, because the old people are not going to do this for us, okay? The presidents and all, they're not going to do this for us. It's going to be up to us. And once we get this done, we're going to put people in power that are from our generation. So now, I don't necessarily see Africa spiking to be what it would in our generation, because the people don't have none of the things that we listed here in mentality. It's very few people, even in the UK, when you were talking about Britishness and all of that, people respect the fact that they have a British passport. Half of the people that I met around here, they will answer them, oh, what about your Nigerian passport? Never got it. They don't care about it. But when I was raised in Italy, even though I have an Italian passport, I'm always renewing my Ghanaian passport because that holds value for me. Because in my mind, that is my key to be an owner and legitimately like a person that has claims in Africa. Is very important. There's a British people that go back to Ghana, marry a Ghanaian lady and get African passport, and they hold on those passports. So who are we to feel like, oh, I got a British passport, I'm so like, it doesn't make sense. So my questions are, Kate was talking about there's a missing link. Could this link be individualism? Because I feel like compared to other cultures and other, not necessarily culture, but other peoples, we are way more individualistic. And I don't want to say they are, because I put us as a collective, we seem to be way more individualistic. Even in, I believe it was Nonane talking about the business and how people look at your business and all of that. People ask you to break down the price a little bit more because they don't think this is black money that goes around. They think, how come I want to take a break? I go in events, when I go to a black-owned event, I buy everything from every stand. I just buy something for everybody, and I don't ask nobody to reduce the price because I'm happy to put my money down there, and I'll take, obviously, I do care about value. If you don't understand something that makes sense and you're just trying to make a quick money off of the black community, it doesn't make sense because you're going to set all of us back. But is individualism something that we can really fight in a generation? Because Chinese people were fighting each other and were fighting Japanese for ages. Then when they build their whatever they have going on over now in the empire and all of that, they had one thing to stand under, something to look at as a collective. and something to feel proud about as a collective. We don't have an African Union. Yeah, we have an organization, but there's no African Union. It's not a real one. If you go and ask Sudan or Somalia, Sudan and Somalia are in the Arab League. These are African countries, but they are in the Arab League. So individualism, and also somebody was talking about how people are always trying to drag it down. If we, as the diaspora, got the level of wealth, not in this generation, it's not going to be now, but we will set it up for our children. And our children will have that type of wealth that they will never feel like, let me drag this person down because they're making money and I'm not making money. If all of us leveled up, let's just catch up on where the white man is first. Once we got there and we had our money in place where racism was just like, yeah, do you? Because even if they wanted to institutionalize racism, whatever, if your money is in the right places, there's no way they can really touch you. If Nike says stuff and then they eat off for Kaepernick and all of that, oh, I'm eating too because my stock is going up too. So if we all leveled up and then have shares in all these companies, had money in all these different things that are going on over here, and then we move back home, we have this strong base of people that want to work for, and we started, okay, let's talk about this voting thing. Let's vote towards this. Let's vote towards that. Let's build this. Let's get in politics in the decent way, in the way that makes sense. Even if we were to be the minority, keep in mind that that is exactly what you already have going on in Germany, in Italy, and all of that. Is the 1% that drives the votes, the wealth, and everything in the country. So if we as diaspora became the 1% in Africa, but not with the messed up mentality that the 1% has in the West, but with the mentality of enlightening, raising our kids and all of that, then we would have powers to put in school pride in your land, pride in your skin, pride in your continent, and all of this thing. We will make sure that if one of our people messes up because he sells off a country to an European, we'll be like, hold on, wait a minute, this is not going to go on around here. And if we had the power, America's not going to come around and be like, yo, you need to do this. We need to do what? Do you still want your so-and-so gold coming your way? Yeah? Okay, go back home, America. Period. If we had that type of power to take back our governments, our this and our that, then the person that is in Brazil, the person that is in West Indies, the black person that's even in India, they wouldn't have a reason to emigrate to go to places, the diaspora that emigrates to places like Abu Dhabi, Qatar, and all of this, and then they become maids and then they become prostitutes. Nobody would have a reason to go and do none of that because home would be gold. And the person that is part of the people that were taken away from slavery and all these people will be like, you know what? That's my source right now. I have a reason to feel proud because everybody in the world looks at black people the way people right now look at Jewish people. So when he walks down the road and then wealth is coming up, if he comes back and reaches home and he's like, you set him up, there's money going around, we have a support system. We don't need you to come and live at home. You want to go back to Brazil because you have the community over there? All right, you see right there? That is Ghana point 2. You see in the States? That is Africa point 2. If we had this extension, then yes, it will work. But if we don't set this thing at home, I don't believe nobody has a reason to look back at home and be proud when our leaders are not going to really stand up for them. If George Floyd, what happened? Our leaders spoke. But if tomorrow America, let's say the rise didn't happen, do you think that any of our presidents would have gone to war with America over George Floyd?
I'll have to, this has been a really, really interesting conversation. I'm definitely going to do even more research on this. But to Jay's point, there's a few notes that I made, which are basically, when it comes to trade and white African countries continue to import goods from America, and sometimes it's goods that actually we have here that we actually don't look at them as status symbols. So I was talking about this with my mum, and she was talking about how much copper soup cost in Ghana, and she was just like, people buy it like you when you go into Marks and Spencer's and buy something fine. but Dover, like not Dover sole, but like sole, the fish that's expensive here, you can just buy from the market there, like it's cheap. So it's that sort of flipped mentality of what they're like. We're talking about hood rich and poor man mentality. It's the signals of what you place value on to sort of tell everybody that you're wealthy. And for a lot of Africans, for some reason, just anything that has brushed up with a Western brush, that is their that's their value system. Even though when you come to a Western country, people are trying to get as authentic a lifestyle as they can, and it really does mirror what many Africans are actually experiencing on a day-to-day basis. That sort of, the food is right there, you're having it, you have that sort of close relationship with nature. That's something that people in the West pay a lot of money to experience. So that's just that talk on trade. And I remember we did go to a talk once, and they did say that inter-African trade is more difficult than African countries trading with Europe and America. I'm not exactly sure why that is. But when it comes to African governments, there's a book that basically talks about how there's always been a class of Africans around Africa who have always been the sort of gatekeepers of colonialism. And that has not changed, because we have neo-colonialism, because some of the businesses, Unilever, for example, are businesses that were set up and helped to push colonialism through Africa, and they are still on the continent today. So a lot of the governments, their whole purpose for being there is to be gatekeepers of chaos. When you really look at how the countries are interacting with each other, interacting with their people, there are certain businesses that it's predatory capitalism. They need the countries to be in a state of chaos, because then you can land grab anything. And then those people don't value their land, and they will rush to be a cleaner in somebody's country. And then we'll look at their country with its unspoilt beauty and be like, why would you ever leave? It's because their level of safety is so low. And that for me has always been, as I've been researching land, has been a key source of trepidation, because there are people who their land was grabbed in the 70s and 80s, and they've still not been compensated. And a lot of the times is because those governments act as agents for foreign powers. They are not in service of the people. And just another point about Jay's point about individualism. When I said that materialism has won the argument in Africa, that individualism and materialism go hand in hand. You can't have materialism without individualism. And that's why I said that socialism is something that it did exist on the continent. There were politicians and activists and everybody, Pan-Africans, that were socialists, and were all over the Africa, the Caribbean, Brazil, America, Europe. And we've not really gone down that line of history, because none of the businesses that need Africa to exist in chaos want that to be the narrative in Africa, because those systems bring peace. They bring a country into a state of peace. When we look at Switzerland and Norway and all of those countries, they exist in a constant state of socialism, if we really look at the policies that they have for their own people. I think just making people more aware of community. So even to Nolene's point about locals, start off small. Microeconomics, focus on your local community. When you begin to think about the people in your locality and you all start to work for your betterment, as that happens in all of your smaller communities, it has a ripple effect. And people begin to understand the value of it when they have lived with socialism. It creates wealth. The generation that we have in this country that voted for Brexit, they lived in the most comfortable generation this country had ever seen. And what created that level of comfort was socialism that their parents chose after the war. It literally transforms the face of this country for working class people. And they know that if it can make the European working class Brit jump in the way that they did from the 50s to the 90s, they can you imagine what it would do for Africa with the land, with the resources, with the materials? And they don't want that. So that's, for me, where people need to really look into is microeconomics in terms of your local community, land, and then thinking about, and it's very important, is ecology. The next thing that we'll be fighting in the next century it won't be World War III over, different land grabbing. It will be over climate change and pollution. And if the African has been at the bottom of the totem pole for everything else, as we've seen with the coronavirus, we were not indexing highly when this thing first started, but in African and Asian communities have the highest death rates, even though we weren't the ones to be contracting this. And this is something that's you can directly parallel with basically with the changing state of the world. So when we're talking about business and when we're talking about becoming rich, I really think that rich needs to be a more broad definition that goes beyond money, and it goes into thinking about the safety of the planet and the safety of Africans within that. Because when diseases start to crop up, when medicine suddenly becomes scarce, when clean air suddenly needs to get paid for, you'll suddenly see we'll start to rent land from Europeans who have now gone to Africa with its unspoilt beauty, and then be like, oh, why didn't you guys do this? And it's because they made us feel like there was no value there. And then we'll be left in a state of unrest within Europe. So yeah, that's just, I don't think there's one solution. I think the solutions that everybody has mentioned, some things I hadn't even thought about, it can happen on all levels.
Some of the reasons why, for the lack of inter-African trade, as Jay was saying, that a self-sufficiency, that Congo do not need to export the material to Nigeria. The reason why they don't is because there's no manufacturing. If they improved or created value chains need to be created. There needs to be a distribution of activities. So if they manufactured these phones, then there would be a need for them to export this material. I mean, this the same thing he was saying about the rice, it's true. We have our rice, we're self-sufficient. However, we import the rice from America, the plastic rice from all over the world. It's ridiculous. I know what's his name, Buhari, the president of Nigeria, he had an initiative, I think last year, whereby he wanted Nigeria to be he wanted them to produce more rice, increase the production of rice, and actually the consumption, so to the point where they banned the sale or import of other rice. So that, I know there was a drive for that. Another ridiculous thing that Nigeria does, so we're oil rich, right? We're oil rich. However, they export crude oil only to import, petrol, refined oil, because we have no refineries. It's ridiculous. We did have refineries, however, they are in disrepair. We need to move from, the two largest economies in Africa, South Africa and Nigeria, they are so dependent. They're so dependent on commodities, oil, mining. We need to move from service-based industry and manufacturing, and then that we can ensure our growth. In terms of individualism, is our community individualistic? I do think yes. I would say yes. However, crabs in a barrel comes to mind. Crabs in a barrel. Yep. When a people are on the bottom of of the economic ladder, it comes down to survival.
Yes, so we need to, because it's not that we didn't ever have a community mindset and we didn't operate as, in aid of one another, but somehow individualism, like Elias said, has gone to the forefront, and it's I need to do for me before my community. But there's a saying that you take care of your community and you will eat as well. So that is the mindset that we need to have. You do for yourself individually. However, there are people that are doing for themselves individually at the detriment of the community. And, the other way, the extreme if you go to the extreme in the other way, it's not right either. The people that are putting everything on the line for their community and then they're suffering individually, that's not right either. We need to have a balance where we're providing for ourselves individually and we are feeding the community as well.
The people that are old generation, they're not going to worry about building up Africa. They worry about retirements. So if we don't install this in the young ones, and hopefully people that are our age will switch over to that, because you can educate people, it will be really hard for us to move away from that individualist mentality.
Sure. Well, like we said, like Malcolm X taught us, it's not something that we may see in this lifetime, but we sow the seeds now. The most important thing is that they know they're building a better tomorrow, because you may not see the benefits today, but that's the vision of the bigger picture, and that is the priority. We're not going to get everybody. It's not everybody that's going to be on this wavelength, you know. The majority is always the most ignorant, you know, but hopefully the minority will spark change here and people will catch on.
That's the reason why I said in my point about doing it micro. I think that's the smartest thing about local and really understanding what your local community needs, because sometimes when we talk about things like Black economics and all of that, it feels very big and you can't really understand how to disseminate that into your local, into your everyday life, into your local community, and what that could look like for you. So I feel like, and I've thought this for quite some time, that really focusing on businesses that talk about local needs. So even if it's the manufacturing of clothes, keep that local. Your farming, your agriculture, keep it local, and then start to trade within, you know, in Africa we have the different tribes and villages and whatnot. Over here too, you have different boroughs. You've got Birmingham, you've got Bristol, you've got all of the different places. And also when it comes to investing, I feel like one of the big things that nobody really mentions when we talk about the Indian and the Chinese communities specifically is that they move very strategically when they move into an area. So they will occupy a whole area together in terms of housing, and they won't be isolated, and that really helps them in future generation when it comes to voting. One of the biggest things that in this country Labour is suffering with at the moment is every single person in London and Birmingham and Manchester could vote for Labour and they still would not win, because in all of the other boroughs where there are no diverse people, where people buy into this media hype, we're not represented there. And I think we need to think more strategically about moving as a unit, and also going a bit under the radar with a lot of things. But it doesn't have to be big, you know, dramatic show and tell. Some of it needs to be freaking silent, because I don't know about anybody else. Me, I'm not dying for any movement. Dying for any movement. So it needs to be just steady, and that's
Everybody's clapping their hands.
No one's gonna die.
In terms of why we don't patronize each other, I was listening to something that Louis Farrakhan said in a speech. It was an old speech. And he said that we are fully aware of the contributions of certain communities. I mean, when they talk about the Jewish community, we're fully aware of that. Then when they talk about the China, we know their contribution to history. And however, the contribution of Africans historically, they're not really preached about. We're not educated on it unless you dig, unless you go on social media and you pick up a book and you read on it. So what happens with that is, when we are not aware of is ignorance, when we're not aware of the contribution of Black people. So many Europeans, they may not be aware of the contributions of Africans throughout history, the Chinese. So now this set of people, they become replaceable, disposable, they're of no use, they're of no value. We do not place, we within ourselves, we do not even place value on what we can bring to the table. So there's a question on our value, and I think that really does come from propaganda, the lack of awareness of the contribution of Africans and Black people throughout history. And I think it's a subconscious thing. We have it in our subconscious that we are of no value. Whatever we're bringing to the table is obviously substandard. You know, you see it with, if you have a school that is predominantly Black students and they have Black teachers, even African Caribbean people, they would question the value. But then you have another school that is 95% white, and they would hold that up as a standard, that this is obviously of a very good standard. Why is that? I think subconsciously this has been communicated to us, and we have bought into it that we are of not much value. What have we really contributed to the economic wealth of our world? Not much, when based on what we've been told. But if you dig deeper, you would actually see we have contributed to the civilizations that we benefit from today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. That was such an important point, and so true. Even as we see today, the videos of devaluing African lives, you know, they make you desensitize yourself and make you feel like there is no value. It is something that we have to commit ourselves to re-educating our community. It's no one's responsibility. It's not the Europeans' responsibility to put the best of us at the forefront, or even tell us about it. It's our responsibility. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining. This was an amazing session. I actually think we need to do another one on finance and stuff, because it's really some good things coming out, and there's more work to do. I'm hoping that everyone who watches this video has learned something, and it has sparked a new form of education that you are going to carry on.